This call is now being recorded.
Okay, this is Kevin Lockett from the Kevin Lockett Podcast, and today we are talking to Brian Berger from Sports Business Radio, and today we're going to talk about all things NBA and China. So how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So, call me ignorant when it comes to the NBA and China. If you would have asked me about the NBA and China about a month ago, I would have said, okay, Jimmy Fredette found his career there. Stephon Marbury is a god, and a lot of guys sell shoes in China. I had no idea that one tweet from Daryl Morey would cause all this damage. What were your reflections on when all this stuff happened?
Oh, gosh, lots of reflections. I've been to China, so I've seen this all firsthand, and you go walk down the streets and you see all the signage with the NBA stars, and you see the Nike and Adidas shops, and really the NBA has done a better job of marketing their brand in China than any other U.S. pro sports league. So that was really striking to me. But, as I talked about on Sports Business Radio a couple of weeks ago, at the core of this relationship, you have polar opposites, right? You have the NBA who encourages its players and executives and owners to speak freely, but then you've got China who has a communist government and really wants to control what's said. And for an example, when I was in China, I was in my hotel room and I tried to Google Tiananmen Square, and it doesn't come up. It's like it never happened. And you're dealing with a communist government. They control what is said and how it's said and who receives it. And so if you look at it from that standpoint, this has been a long time in coming. I'm surprised it hasn't bubbled up before now. But you're right, that one tweet really changed the dynamic of the relationship, and I think kind of exposed the differences of the NBA and China for the whole world to see.
The sad thing is that I don't think Daryl Morey did anything wrong. Like, I'm a guy who believes in social justice. I mean, I wouldn't be talking to you on the phone today if it was for people who was fighting for civil rights back in the 60s. So for me, he's just supporting people who are just fighting for their democracy. But when it comes to business, the communism part, I'm with you. I'm kind of shocked that this hasn't happened already.
Yeah, I mean, again, the thing that China and the NBA share is they love basketball, and the people of China love basketball. I think even the government loves basketball. They also love money. The NBA loves money, and China loves money. And, those were the common threads between the two entities. But other than that, there's really not a lot in common. And, again, that tweet exposed things, and you have the NBA who encourages everyone to speak freely, who's been so out front of social issues. And, that was something that really caught them off guard. As I also said on Sports Business Radio, I was surprised at how off guard the NBA was on this, because it took them 3 or 4 statements from Adam Silver before they finally got it right. They didn't seem to really have a response or a crisis plan in place. And they usually handle crises as well as anyone. We saw that with the Donald Sterling situation and other situations that have arisen, whereas you've got leagues like the NFL where they just ignore things and hope that they find their way out of the news cycle and that people move on to thinking about something else. So I was surprised by the whole situation, but if you really stop and think about it, this has been a volcano waiting to erupt for a long time.
It's interesting you mentioned Adam Silver, because like you said with Donald Sterling and when the players were wearing the shirts saying "I can't breathe," like he's always been very good at striking that line between being an owner who kind of answers to, being a commissioner who answers to the owners, but also who is very player friendly. Like, so he's able, outside of all the commissioners in sports, he seems to have navigated the best with that. But this is the first time that I've seen him really caught off guard where he doesn't know what to do in this situation.
I don't know that if he didn't know what to do, it just wasn't. Look, they were in another country. He was in Japan at the time. Then he flew to China. There were a lot of moving parts, so it wasn't like this happened when he was sitting in his offices in New York. So I get all of that. But still, you have to think of the worst case scenarios and how to plan for those. And I don't think the NBA thought of how this was going to be received. And then, by the way, the NBA does business in Africa and they do business in India. Those are also parts of the world where I would say there are some things going on that coaches, GMs, or players could condemn at some point on social media. And those could also bubble up just like China did. So, when you're doing business with someone who doesn't share your values, this is what happens.
So there's a company, I hope I got this right. Is it Tencent? Is it Tencent? I'm not sure. They stream the games live for China.
Media giant in China, Tencent.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, so I was doing research on it. I didn't know the NBA contract was like $1.5 billion. Like, I had no idea that, that this thing would be that significant because like you said about Africa, I figured, okay, well, if they'll have issues with China, they'll just focus on different parts of the world and kind of focus on building those markets up a little bit more. But China is a heavyweight when it comes to the finances for the NBA.
They are, and it's largely in part to the fact that they have 1.6 billion people. So they have a ton of people there. There's a lot of potential viewers, consumers, and people to digest NBA basketball. So it's a very important market for the NBA. I still think, and this is what I said on Sports Business Radio, I think this is a flawed relationship. And if I were the NBA, even though it would cost me a lot of money in the short term, I would not do business with China in the future based on the current relationship. And if people think that a communist country is going to change its tune or soften its stance with the NBA, I don't see that happening because they've practiced what they preach for many, many hundreds of years. They have a long history of their government and their thoughts. And I just think it's two polar opposite views. And I don't see how this doesn't come up again down the road. And the U.S. and the NBA would be walking on eggshells if they continue this partnership. Now, the NBA owners wouldn't like that idea at all. Players probably wouldn't like it because it's going to cost them money because, remember, BRI, basketball-related income, if you're getting $1.5 billion from Tencent and other revenues from China, not to mention a lot of NBA players have shoe deals in China, it's a lot of money at stake. I get it. But I just think that this is going to bubble up in the future, and whether the NBA wants to walk on eggshells and really kind of kowtow to China, that doesn't seem to be their way, and it certainly has gotten them in trouble here in the last few weeks in the United States, whether it's Congress writing a letter to Adam Silver or fans saying, wait, why is the NBA kowtowing to China? I don't like that. That could hurt them here domestically.
So I have to check to see if Nike said anything because I was thinking about LeBron James. And for full disclosure, this podcast is based in Akron, Ohio. So we're all proud of LeBron. And he's done a lot of great things in Akron. He's been a great ambassador for the league. But even he had to navigate a lot with this China situation. But from the shoe deal standpoint, how will this affect NBA players? Not just LeBron, but all the rest of them who have people buying shoes in China. And Nike has a lot of business in China. I mean, how does it affect the shoe business?
A lot. Yeah, I mean, I think Nike had like 21% growth in China in their last fiscal year. It's one of their biggest markets, if not the biggest. For the players themselves, it just opens up a whole world of opportunity for them. It's why most NBA players go visit Asia during the off season. So it would cost the shoe companies and the athletes lots of money. It would ultimately cost the NBA lots of money. But, I mean, if someone has a better solution for me, I don't know what it is because the NBA doesn't seem to want to change their ways. China isn't going to change their ways. So who's going to give in this scenario? And if no one gives, aren't we going to have more of the same eventually?
So how does Yao Ming play in this? Because he's the president, I think, of the Chinese Basketball Association. And he's unique because, I mean, he was born and raised in China, but he spent a lot of time playing for the Houston Rockets, so he understands how the NBA works here, but he does work for China. So he can't really say too much. If he really had a thought of how to do things differently that might work with the NBA, the Chinese government might not like it. So how does Yao Ming play this right now?
Well, I mean, he's always going to be loyal to China, right? That's where he lives. That's where his businesses are. He's a god over there. When I was there, I spent time with him and Steve Nash and Baron Davis and others. And I mean, he's bigger than life, literally, in China. So he has no choice but to fall into line with what China wants. And, you know, I haven't spoken with him, but from people I've spoken with, they said that, you know, he was pretty upset by all of this and wasn't talking to the Rockets and wasn't talking to Adam Silver. And, you know, Yao, if you go back, he's really the person that opened the door for the NBA to do booming business in China. So that's not a good thing either when Yao Ming, who is synonymous with basketball in China, and the NBA, biggest basketball league in the United States, when they're at odds, that's not a good thing. And I'm not sure how that gets patched up, because it goes back to what I said. If the NBA is going to be true to its values and allow people to speak freely, but communist China doesn't want people to speak freely when it comes to China, how does that get worked out?
So I was thinking about this. So how did this whole partnership with China actually happen? I mean, did it begin with Yao Ming, or did David Stern had this idea early on, or was it because of the Dream Team? I mean, what was the first inklings that the NBA really wanted to build a relationship with China?
Oh, I think this dates back a few decades. And, you know, I think obviously David Stern was commissioner, and the league did want to grow its brand globally, and thought that that was one of the things that could set them apart from the NFL and Major League Baseball and the NHL, is really making inroads in China. And then, you know, at its core, there's 1.6 billion people in China. So you look at that market as just a huge opportunity for your league. And I think that's where it all started. Then Yao Ming comes along, and there had not been a Chinese star that played in the NBA, and now you've got that. You know, Yao Ming, huge star, played in the NBA. Everyone in China followed him and voted for him for the All-Star game, and media outlets started carrying all the Rockets games and other NBA games. So I think that accelerated that relationship. And, you know, like you noted earlier, it had been on pretty good terms, at least public-facing, until that tweet. But, like I said, this was kind of doomed from the beginning, because you're doing business with someone that doesn't share the same values that you do.
Going off topic a bit, because I'm always fascinated by Stephon Marbury and his transformation in China. What did China give him that he couldn't get in the NBA, where he actually became the guy in China that people thought he was going to be coming out of high school when he was first drafted?
Lots of fans who love basketball, money, and he started going over there for his shoe deal. And then when he saw his days in the NBA were winding down, he pivoted and went and played in China. It was really beloved, because people like how he played, but they also like the fact that he was a personality. And, you know, it was kind of a love affair. And now I think he's coaching over there, and it's been very fruitful for him. And like I said, there's a lot of money to be had over in China, and a lot of the Chinese are very fond of American basketball players who come over there. And, you know, they want basketball at the highest level over there. And the CBA, the Chinese Basketball Association, is nowhere near the talent of the NBA. So I think that's how it all kind of originated. But it's been a nice story for Marbury and for the Chinese basketball fans that love his game and love his personality.
Has Major League Baseball ever tried to make inroads in China, or they just haven't really pushed that hard?
No, they have. But Major League Baseball, you know, I have friends there and like them. I'm excited about the World Series, but you know, they need to market themselves better here in America,
right,
before they go anywhere else. I think they've made more inroads in Japan than any other league, and that's in large part due to Ichiro and some of the other Japanese players that have come to play in Major League Baseball. You know, Ichiro was kind of the Yao Ming for Major League Baseball to open up a lot of doors over there for Major League Baseball, but Major League Baseball certainly hasn't made the inroads in China that the NBA has. And neither is the NFL or the NHL, as I noted earlier.
Yeah, so if you could tell, if you could help Major League Baseball, because I do think also they have a big marketing problem. If you could fix one or two things about Major League Baseball, what would it be?
Oh, gosh. Well, number one, people want to know the players. And I don't feel like even Mike Trout, you know, you think of some of the biggest names in the game. Aaron Judge. We know Justin Verlander, you know, has a supermodel wife and just had a baby, who we don't really know that much about the players. Whereas with the NBA, we know like the 9th and 10th guy on the bench and what they're doing and what they like to eat and how they're interacting with people on social media. It's a very different thing with Major League Baseball. So, A, people need to know the players better. And then B, they've got to figure out the length of game, because as the next generation of consumers comes along, people like my teenage daughter, they all have ADD. They're not going to sit around for 4 hours and watch a game. So that's going to be a concern for Major League Baseball, is how do you make your game more digestible for the young consumers that are coming along in the next 10 to 20 years.
Pivoting back to the China situation with the NBA. So you basically said, like, you wouldn't work with, you know, if you were the NBA, you wouldn't partner with them unless some things change. Moving forward, how should the NBA treat their global brand? If they say, okay, China, we're putting you aside, we're not going to focus on you for a while, what should they do to keep on building their brand across the world?
Well, I mean, that's where you, again, really have to ask yourself what you're willing to sacrifice in order to do business with countries that don't have the same values. So, you know, again, there's things going on in Africa. The NBA is doing business in Africa. There's things going on in India. The NBA is doing business in India. Can you put your politics aside and simply, you know, share the love of basketball and the love of money? If you can, then I guess you can keep working together. But if you can't, and again, the NBA more than any other league encourages its players, coaches, GMs to speak candidly and openly about social issues, then, you know, I really don't know what you do. I think you have to work, you know, closer to home, and I think there's going to be lots of opportunities for other revenue streams. Literally streaming is going to be coming along pretty soon. It's already starting to become more prevalent. We see Disney Plus and Apple Plus launching services next month. Peacock, NBC service is going to launch soon. There's going to be other forms of revenue that could potentially replace the China revenue or the Africa revenue or the India revenue. But if your owners, you know, it's really up to the 30 owners. And if they say, you know what, we want to be the global sports league and we're willing to take our chances with dealing with political ramifications from countries who don't share our values, then, you know, that's a decision they make. But they have to be ready for things like this when they pop up or bubble up.
Do you think will this have any blowback on the WNBA players? Because a lot of the women make most of their money overseas. Yeah, I'm not sure how many of them play in China, but will this also affect the ladies if they play in China?
I mean, it could if the Chinese government says, look, we're not welcoming the NBA or the WNBA in our country anymore. We're not welcoming any of those players to come over here on shoe tours or, you know, ambassador tours or anything like that, then certainly it changes things. It's taking away that market. But, you know, we'll see. I know the people in China love NBA and WNBA basketball, and you know, maybe there's a case where they put some pressure on the leaders in China to figure out a way to continue to make this relationship work. And, you know, I'm not trying to be doomsday. I just think if you look at it logically at the core, it's polar opposites. the NBA and China, and I'm not sure who's going to give in this situation. And if the NBA gives, then I think they're going to have some problems here in America from people who are saying that they're kowtowing to China. So it's a very complex situation.
Maybe they can get Dennis Rodman. He seemed to negotiate pretty well.
Oh, man. I'm leaving that one alone.
So let me ask you about your sports business radio. Like, for people who may not know, how did you get that started?
Well, we started in 2004, so we're celebrating 15 years this year. And I used to work for the Portland Trail Blazers of the NBA. And through my job there and what I've done since then as a consultant and running an event called Sports PR Summit in New York, I've met a lot of owners and agents and athletes and executives and people who want to be seen as more than just an athlete or more than just a coach. Or, a lot of my friends said, hey, if a trade is made, I want to hear from the owner about why the trade was made. And I'd rather hear from the owner than someone covering the team. And I was like, I have access to those people. So the nice thing is that, I've used my network and my relationships to bring some of those conversations to our audience. And I think it's worked out really well. I know selfishly, I've enjoyed talking to those people for 15 years and, have learned so much from listening to, the David Stearns and Mark Cubans and Jeannie Busses and Michael Vicks and just some, really noteworthy people over the last 15 years. And I feel like it's a master class every week. I have CJ McCollum from the Portland Trail Blazers on this week. The head of Gatorade is coming on in a couple weeks. So I feel like, our audience gets smarter hopefully every time they listen to our show. And it's mainly because of the guests. I'm just trying to ask the questions that hopefully the audience would ask if they were sitting in my seat.
I saw a tweet, you pinned a tweet, I believe, with you had interviewed Damian Lillard. For people from the outside, because we know he loves Portland, but what is the relationship like between Damian Lillard and the Portland Trail Blazers and the city of Portland? What type of relationship is that?
It's a love affair. I mean, he's really a unique guy. So is CJ. But Dame just won the J. Walter Kennedy Citizenship of the Year Award. And he does so much in this community. And, this is not a big market. And a lot of guys would have come and gone or, gone somewhere else. And he's been very loyal. But, he's the type of guy that if he hears a story of a kid needs size 18 shoe and can't find those shoes anywhere, he has Adidas send him 25 pairs of shoes. Or, he hands out shoes, his newest shoe, he'll pull up in a U-Haul with some of his Adidas counterparts, and they'll hand out shoes out of the back of the U-Haul. And he's just one of those guys who realizes how fortunate he is, and he is happy to share his fortune and his time with others. And, this is a market that really eats that stuff up. I mean, more so than LA, Chicago, New York. They really want to have a love affair with the players, and they want their players to be good guys. Like, they'll even sacrifice, well, this might not be a playoff team, but at least the guys on the court are good guys. And, Dame is one of the best. So it was great to sit down with him. He's such a diverse person with his music and his off-the-court interests. And, really that's what a lot of the athletes, when they come on Sports Business Radio, they want to put on their CEO hat, or they want to talk about their diverse interests. And I'm happy to be a platform for them to do that.
Yeah, he's a really good rapper as well. And
he's great.
What's your relationship like? Yeah, he's great. He's actually really good. Like, usually, because I'm used to hearing guys like, okay, I'm going to be a rapper. It's like, okay, they're okay, but he's really good. But for yourself, what's your relationship like with Portland? I mean, with your type of show, you would think if someone says your Sports Business Radio, people would figure, well, he's probably in New York or he's in LA, but you're right there in Portland. So what's your relationship like with Portland?
Well, so you have to think about it. Nike is world headquartered here. Adidas is American headquartered here. Under Armour has offices here. So, this really is the capital of sports business. It may not be New York, but all the athletes are coming through here to meet with Nike and Adidas and sometimes Under Armour. And there's a lot of sports business taking place here. So it is a really good place to be based. for sports business. I get to New York pretty often and do shows in New York every December. So I'll be out there again in December. I've been in LA this year with Jeannie Buss, so I can travel wherever I need to go to meet with the people that want to talk to me. But Portland is a very good place to be based for this show, and there was a lot of thought put into that when we launched the show in 2004 because of the fact that we have such close proximity to Nike, Adidas, and Under Armour.
You're absolutely right. I mean, was Phil Knight ever tempted to leaving Oregon at any point, or he said, "Listen, I'm here and I'm staying here"?
I have no idea. I have not talked to Phil Knight, and I don't know him, so I can't answer that question. But as far as I know, he's still here, and he's not out at Nike every day. He's
right.
I think he's chairman emeritus, but he's this is one of the iconic companies in the state's history that he started. So a lot of jobs and a lot of people out this way are fortunate that they either work directly for Nike or indirectly for Nike and Adidas as well.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess my final question. You never were able to interview Phil Knight, but is there anybody else who's like your top guest that you never had on the show that you still would like to interview?
Oh, man. I'd have to think about that. I've really been fortunate to interview a lot of the people on my list.
Have you got LeBron yet?
No, but you know what? Here's my motto, is I want to talk to people who aren't going to play defense or who are going to – I don't want talking points. I want reason, right. And I want candor. And I've been around LeBron, and, I'll keep my thoughts to myself, but I feel like that interview would be a lot of talking points, and I don't know how candid it would be. I would love to have Michael Jordan on, but it's the same concern I would have, that it would be talking points. Tiger Woods might be a little bit more open now, but probably a lot of talking points. So, if you listen to my interview with Michael Vick, that's as raw as it gets. I mean, he literally, took us visually into his prison cell on night one after he lost his freedom and $200 million and was sitting in his jail cell. And he was willing to take us to that place and admit his mistakes and talk about what he learned. And those are the conversations that I want. I'm not interested in the talking points and the PR speak. So, those are all great names and amazing success stories, but I would want to have people on who, Roger Goodell would probably be a lot of talking points. And, I'm not sure how open or candid he would be on some things. So I'd have to think about it. Billie Jean King is on my list for sure. She's someone that is iconic and, just an amazing person who's changed so much in the world. And she would be on my list of people. But I'd have to think of some others. I guess, if you got him in the right setting, Tom Brady might be interesting. He's been really good on social media, and if we got that Tom Brady, it'd be great. But if it was the talking point Tom Brady who was defensive or uncomfortable, then that's probably not of interest either. But I think a lot of it is just catching people at the right time and letting them know that you're not looking for the gotcha moment, and you're really looking more for, getting to know them and the audience for them to get to know them a little bit better.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Brian Berger. No problem. If I'm out to Portland, which is rare, where's a good place for me to eat?
Oh my gosh, this is a foodie city. What do you like to eat? If you want a steak, there's El Gaucho is a really good place for steak. We have a lot of vegans and vegetarians out here, so there's a lot of places. There's good pizza. There's a place called Oven and Shaker that has amazing pizza. There's a lot of good places out here. So, yeah, look me up. DM me if you're coming out this way, and I'll give you some suggestions.
I will do that. All right, Brian Berger, thank you for our conversation. If people want to check you out, where can they go?
They can go to sportsbusinessradio.com, and our award-winning podcast is available on iTunes and Spotify.
All right. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.